of Craft.io. So Craft.io is the home for digital product managers. We really believe that digital product managers need a place to do their work and really to move the conversation from the what to the why. So looking at our workspace, we have broken down into major categories of strategy, define, plan, track, and discover. And we're sitting in one workspace, and we'll see later on how we can have multiple workspaces which all join together to a master portfolio management level. So looking at the workspace itself and trying to understand a little bit about the hierarchy. So when we think about product, so we have the major bucket of product, and then we have three types of building blocks. You have epics, which are the largest blocks, features, which are slightly smaller, and then sub-features, which are the smallest. And we appreciate within Craft that every company will use either most likely Jira or Azure DevOps or GitHub or GitLab. And even those who are using the standard solutions might have their own terminology for these items. And therefore in Craft, we believe it's intrinsically important to be able to have a unified terminology across the teams and for everyone to understand what are we talking about. And therefore we encourage our users to customize the terminology to the terminology using in-house. And we also have here a guru terminology drop-down list to allow you to choose from the most popular used within product management for your own workspace. And the same is true for objectives and key results and for the major time cadence, which is either be releases or quarters in a classical sense. So when we think about digital product management, there's really a pre-product stage that I think is extremely important to think about. And that is the strategic inputs. And when I think about strategic inputs, there are three major areas I think about: persona, objectives, and key results. Persona is really answering the question, who is the straw person I am working for? Who will be using my product one day? Who will be paying to use this solution we're developing? And the better we understand this straw person, the better we are able to identify what they need and connect either the future epics or stories to those personas, so we can really focus our development on our personas. And when we think about personas, so we have these customizable battle cards where you can choose the important items you want to discuss, you want to think about. And the more you think about and the more you hone in and polish off who these personas are, the better the product most likely will come out. So once we've spoken about our personas, the next item we want to think about is, what do I want to achieve? What is my goal? What is my objective? And these are really broad brushstrokes of ideas. I either want to grow, I want to shrink, I want to increase, or I want to decrease. No numerical expression, but rather just giving me the direction what we're going in. And the numerical expression is given in the key results, which will tell me what does a significant growth look like. It's either 10%, 20%, 30%, for example, and a decrease might be 2, 3, or 4%, whatever it may be. But the key result is really the hand and glove to the objective to allow me not just to know what direction am I going in, but how do I know when I've reached my objective? So once we've thought about those three areas of personas, objectives, and key results, we also then can use our strategic inputs for another value, and that could be really for a product wiki. So for example, I can have my company overview, a geolocation discussion. If we're talking about a trading company, we could put in some highlights from our annual reports. And really the strategic inputs then wears two hats. It's one, this pure strategy for the perhaps the personas, objectives, and key results. And it also wears the hat of the wiki to allow both new and old members of the team to get a good understanding, a good snapshot of what's going on within that division. So moving on from strategic inputs, where do most our users start? So as I kind of hinted in the beginning of my introduction and terminology, so Craft has a two-way integration with Jira on-prem and cloud, ATO also prem and cloud, GitHub and GitLab. And with a two-way integration, we're able to push items from those sources, from Craft into those sources, and from those sources into Craft. So most users come in and they'll bring in what is customarily known as their backlog. Now, a backlog in most cases is generally a long laundry list of items which need a lot of working to. It's a lot of filtering and sorting out. But let's just have a look and understand a little bit more of the terminology. So here we're looking at the 4 dots, which is product, and these 3 dots are the in this case the epics, which is the biggest item. So I can kind of see what we're doing, and I can connect it to my objectives and key results. Now, one of the things that we really stress upon within Craft, like I said, is moving the conversation from the what to the why. And one major area where this is really needed within product management is when we think about spec editing. When we try to suggest as product managers new epics or new features for our products, so the question that we're faced with is why. Now, most likely a good product manager will think about that why, and will either answer those questions perhaps on a notebook, maybe in Confluence, but that challenge is twofold. One, it's not an accessible source for all users to get to, and two, there's no template or there's no standardized process which allows the team to perfect and allows managers to expect what information will be there. Now, obviously, the challenge when bringing in templates into such creative work like product management is you want to stifle and limit the creativity, but yet we think we've found here the balance within Craft where we have the creativity, but you can also have the structure. So, for example, another option of the guru templates within Craft, again, we have best practice out of the box or better practice out of the box templates, and we also have templates you can build yourself, so you can have your own form of approaching the questions. And even within the 2 levels of the top level epics, for example, and then features, you'll be able to have different types of templates to allow you to answer different questions. And really what happens is kind of once we leave the spec editor, we really now understand kind of the why of what we're doing and what is pushing us in the direction we're going in. So once we move away from spec editing, the next item to think about is prioritization. Now, prioritization really answers the question of what should come first and what should come last. And this is another good example to look at the guru views we have within Craft. So for example, we have 13 different templates of prioritization within Craft, and these range from 2 extremes, RICE, reach, impacts, confidence, and effort, and the other extreme I would say is a Moscow, must have, should have, could have, and won't have. Now, the reason why these are 2 extremes is because a RICE is a highly numerical expression and process to prioritization, a very much Excel-esque experience where every item has a number, and then we have a sum at the end, while the Moscow is more of a discussion-based, really allowing teams to see where they want to go, less in a numerical way. Now, let's have a look at the RICE score. So as I said, it's putting in real numbers, and then we have our RICE score formula at the end. Now, 2 things to note, which is pretty interesting. One is I have also, beyond my RICE score, the ability to weight the items. And 2, if I need to, I'm able to either modify the RICE score completely or create my own on the same concept of formulas. So I can really have a very full, a very true numerical experience within my prioritization. If we have a look at a now, next, later being, say, another expression of the other extreme, like a Moscow, this is really very much an expression, a discussion-based approach where we would have the items, we can drag and drop them across from one column to another. And obviously, as we drop them across, their metadata is updated from the column they were in to the column they're going in. And really, ultimately, in my opinion, at least, that there are two ideas of prioritization which are important to remember. The first is there's no ultimate truth, and the second one is we need to stay within the same, hold the same yardstick, stay in the same rubric within the period of time we are measuring prioritization in. So it's really very much a focus process. And I sometimes believe that we should have a two-layered approach, because the now next layer allows me to know what buckets items in, but I don't know what's more important or what's less important. And in the rice prioritization, I don't know when, I don't know what is the most important grouping of items. I just have the laundry list of from now from top to bottom. We also have a middle ground approach for teams that either aren't ready for a full rice, perhaps don't want a full rice, and this is what we call our abstract rice. Now, this allows us to put in the numbers by choosing one of four options here, and similarly here, and similarly here. And this is very much like a t-shirt sizing experience, where the color dots correspond to a value, and then the final rice score is a sum, a formula of that value. So really, within the prioritization, we've kind of should get to the result of understanding kind of what is the most important, what is the least important for the current time frame that we are working in. The next stage within the world of product management, another aspect of craft, which is interesting to think about, is capacity planning. Now, capacity planning really answers the question of, I know what I want to do, but what am I able to do within my limitations? So, for example, if we look at this example on the screen, so we have our capacity planning looking at on a team level, which means I have two items, two teams I have here, my front end team and my back end team, and these are 5 items I would like to push, for at least from the product planning side, into the engineering team for them to be deployed, to be developed. However, as you can see, I've received from my product team, the velocity is 125 and 155 from the back end team. This can either come in as a pure number or part of this formula. And the problem is that I've been overly generous in what I want to do, and I've hit the limitations from my back end team. So without a process, most teams will either just will fight and shout and bury the head in the sand and push forward. However, we don't want them to do that. We want to work again with strategy, and therefore what we have here this very simple but sophisticated approach of turning items on and off. And that really allows me to understand, when I move things from planning into the roadmap, am I working towards the capacity of my team? Do I have full confidence that my team will be able to do what I want them to do, obviously barring unknown or unforeseen circumstances? And this also allows you an added benefit. It allows you to then start working through your backlog to start pulling things out when you see that your team does have credit. Now, you can do the capacity planning either on a team level, as we saw. You could break it down within a team to individual users, or you could break it down perhaps into positions, really whatever works best for your team. Now, before I move on to road mapping and then into feedback, now's a good time to kind of note one of the added benefits of craft is, as you can see, there are within the categories, we have 2 items, and we have something here called workspace views, and I have these preset views that I've developed. Now, what we have within craft is an appreciation and a realization that we understand the structure of product management, but every team will have their own approach to how they want to do things and they want to see things and how they want the navigation bar to be. So we have 2 ways of modifying that or customizing it or crafting it. The first is developing and building and saving your personal views, which would then sit down here below your personal views, or alternatively, you'll be able to save them as workspace views, which would then be here and then accessible to everyone within your team who has access to your workspace. This is not to say that you're hiding or modifying information or data, but rather the structure, the formalization, the organization of the data, once saved like this, will then be accessible to everyone on your team who has access to your workspace. Now, moving onto roadmaps. Now, when we think about roadmaps, there are two major variables that are obviously important to think about. The first is time, and the second is depth or granularity. Now, there's generally a strong correlation. The more senior I get within an organization of who am I presenting to, we want to go wider and less granular, and the closer towards the product team am I getting, then the narrower in time and the more granular within my presentation. So we have a number of ways of showing roadmaps. This one, for example, is a fantastic roadmap to show senior management. We have here, this is looking on a product level. So here, well, this is actually, these are the epics, and these are my stories, and I can see the development and the process over a 12-month period. I can see it on the epic level as well, and I can see where items are up to on their product process, which we'll go into in a minute. And I can also see the percentage completion of the children items to the item they're looking at. This is epic to stories, and several stories to sub features. So this is one roadmap. Another roadmap, which I think is, again, moves the conversation to a little bit more of an interesting place, is this one, which we put together. And this is objectives for the first half of this year. And if we imagine we received from senior management 5 objectives, we then went back and spoke to the product team. The product team then came up with various epics. And now I want to be able to present both to the senior management team, but also to show the product team how we've connected these two areas, which often seem so far apart in the world of product. We're actually bringing them very close together. So we're showing management that, or the senior management, that improving the product, the global branding can be achieved by these 6 items. And similarly, I can show the product team that these 6 items that we are developing will allow us to achieve something which we've been asked for by senior management. This also allows senior management to kind of forecast or envision what the product will look like once it is developed, and also allows for the conversation of, are we going in the right direction? Are we putting enough focus on the right items? The next roadmap, which is also fascinating to think about, is really a really novel way that Craft has produced this, is thinking about personas. So we saw before at the beginning of the presentation that personas is a really critical thing to think about and part of our strategic planning. Now, this roadmap shows me the time period. This is sprints, but it can obviously be releases, quarters, against the personas we've identified. Now, the conversation I have on a roadmap like this is, one, are we supplying enough updates, improving the experience to our personas, perhaps to a high value? Have we identified perhaps there will be a big burst in the market of a certain persona, and we want to be able to ensure we can either improve their experience or bring their experience up to par with everybody else? And also allows me to understand of where are we focusing our energies, where do I expect perhaps our greater revenue to come from? So this is grouped by sprints, and the swim lanes are personas. And I can do the same for quarters with objectives, really, again, moving the conversation to why are we doing what we're doing. Now, one of the challenges the product managers often face is the need or the desire to have an external roadmap. However, external roadmaps face 2 issues. One, I don't want to give away too much strategic information to competitors. And 2, I really don't want to obligate myself to too much detail to my users. And therefore, we have in Craft the ability to have this compact view of the Kanban cards, and then really to tear away most of the data, to leave it very bereft of too much information. And I can then share that information with my users. I can share this, and actually any view within Craft with an URL, either with or without a password. And what this gives is a read-only single view of the view that we're sharing. And also, as once you've shared that view, you then have full control over the link, which you can then turn off at any time. Further, just to see a few more interesting views. So you also have the ability to have a Gantt chart view, which is like the classic waterfall for those who are still interested. And for example, we can also see the dependencies. Now, this is the most granular of roadmap views. I can see the relationship between various items. This is the epics between teams, where I can see this related, blocked by, or blocks. Now, before we move to feedback and then to the portfolio view, there is another view which is important to see. And that's this. Now, this is one of my favorite views, actually. This is the distribution life cycle view, I like to call it. And this shows me the factory floor of product management. Now, if you ask most product managers kind of what are the stages, you might get a pre, during, and post dev, but obviously product management stages are far more complex than that. And within craft, we appreciate that you need to see where everything's going on, where are the bottlenecks, what can I assume, when do I need to bring in perhaps teams that are beyond the regular product teams. So we can have this customizable chain where we can have from ideation all the way to go to market with our automation rules with Jira and Azure DevOps. As items move within those tools, it will move across within craft. But this is really where it becomes very exciting. Once you've had the dev done, I can then bring in stages, for example, help center article, release notes, marketing items, and I can then tag my marketing team or my content team who can be in craft and free users. Hey guys, come take a look. They can come in, read the spec, understand what's going on. In their purpose-built tools, they can kind of write their release notes or the marketing items. And then when they're finished, they can let me know. And I can also have a final approval stage where nothing goes out before it's given the final approval from perhaps legal or somewhere in senior management. And then it gets pushed to completed. So really, this is giving me the full factory floor view of what's going on. Now let's move to the feedback portal. Now, feedback is a really interesting idea, and within craft we have an interesting two-way approach to feedback. The primary approach to feedback is that we believe for feedback to be important, it needs to be structured, and you need to really guide the person who's giving feedback down a certain path. But obviously you can't sit with every single person giving feedback. So our approach is to have a customizable feedback form. And what this does is, like I said, you're really guiding the person down the path of the feedback, and it really allows you to gain the most amount of feedback, the most amount of value from the feedback to the person. Now, we also appreciate that there might be, out of the 100% of questions you want to ask, 80% are critical, while 20% are nice to have. Therefore, you can mark items as obligatory or voluntary to have that freedom and that flexibility for your users. They can attach a file if they need to, and it's a very simple process to come in. All feedback is through a username and password. It's a free username and password because we believe there's great value of understanding who gave the feedback as opposed to anonymous feedback. Now, you can also see, kind of get some reporting, kind of where's the feedback coming from, who gave it, and where's it up to in the stages. In addition, I can see the categories. I can view all the feedback. I can filter the feedback. We can do some voting on the feedback. But really what's most important is once I've read the feedback and I realize it is truly valuable, I have two options. I can either promote it to an epic or to a story, or I can connect it to an existing item as proof that I'm fully aware of what's going on in my market. And when you connect it into Craft, you're then able to build views like this, which is really the pinnacle of product management. So this view here is showing me my 5 products, and these items are all items which are linked to feedback. And this is really the golden triangle, which means we have a customer who's using our product, we have spoken to them, we've received feedback, we've implemented that feedback into improving the product, and this epic is now in production or is going to be pushed into production. And this really allows me to present to senior management that we're not just kind of selling our product or bringing a solution to the market, we're also improving it based on our customer feedback. And that really kind of circles in and gives product management a great level of satisfaction. Now, moving to a very exciting area within Craft is our portfolio management level. So as we spoke about, we were sitting just now in a workspace. So a workspace can contain probably about, I don't know, maybe about 2 or 3 different products until it gets too messy and too noisy. And kind of the worst thing is with these, multiple shared products is there's so much information coming in. The more and more you get thrown in, and the half-baked ideas get thrown in, that ultimately gets overly complicated and overly messy, and it's really very difficult to run in one area. And therefore in Craft we appreciate that, and therefore we have these multiple workspaces you can have, which then tie up into a portfolio management level. So I can see here my portfolios R2, R3, and Rickers and Co. So I'm able to see the 3 portfolio levels. I can see what are we doing across the, for example, Q2, Q3, and Q4 of this year. And I'm also able to see how it connects to my objectives. And I can see how it breaks down into my various workspaces. I can also see dependencies across my workspaces. And like in the other workspaces, I'm able to also have my guru views and create my own views. So to summarize, if I think about Craft, what is Craft and why is Craft different to everyone else in the market? So I would say like this, I'd summarize like this. Most tools, or all other tools in the market, approach product management as a science. There's a clear defined way of doing prioritization. There's a clear defined way of doing road mapping. At Craft, that's not our approach. At Craft, we really appreciate that there's no one way of doing prioritization, and there's no one way of doing road mapping. What I do know are the tools that you'll need, and I do and my team have the skill and the knowledge and the experience to help and to guide and to consult our partners to having better product management. And with Craft, on the one hand, and our excellent customer support success teams, we really allow our partners to really build and develop a very strong process in product management to allow them to be able to not just build the product right, but build the right product. Thank you very much.